Greetings, Nephilim. It's been quite some time since we've last seen you, and actually, a lot has happened. Tonight, we're going to cover all sorts of goodies that have been brought to us by the good folks over at Blizzard. There's a couple of sad notes, a couple of happy notes, and some things that are in between. You be the judge. But tonight, we're going to cover. Should I spoil it? Nobody likes spoilers, right? Even if I give you a spoiler alert, you're gonna still listen because it's the podcast. You can't really skip around. You want to hear everything. So I'll save the best for what's to come. But as of right now, I'm gonna kick it over to my main man, Nineball. Good sir, it's been 2 weeks. How have you been?
It has been 2 weeks. It has been pretty good, pretty good. Definitely shout out to you for the choice of our musical selection here for this evening. I might actually just keep like the Final Fantasy Tactics playing in the background like the whole episode, because I have to admit it's been a while since I last listened to this.
And now this is the moment where I wish I could hear what you were hearing. I wish I could smell what you were smelling.
Yeah, we could actually do that. There's like this one website that's like Watch Together or something like that, where you queue up a YouTube video and it will play for both people at the same time.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that was a thing. That's like saving long distance relationships everywhere.
Oh, I'm sure. Totally. Yeah. No, let's go. We'll watch this video together.
Oh, it's just like we're holding hands.
Aww.
Oh, shucks.
The world, it's getting so small. But yeah, no, I've been pretty good. Since the last episode, I wanted, previously I was talking about how I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone. I have still been playing a lot of Hearthstone, and of course, I am like 2 stars away from rank 10, and then I tweet about it. My goal is to get rank 10. Well, I'm sitting at rank 14 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You done goofed.
Yep. I guess it's like my problem is I try to do it while doing dailies, so I don't have like the cards to really do much other than certain decks right now, and it hasn't. It's not been pretty. So I ran back to arena for a while.
You could do your dailies in like wild or unranked.
Yeah.
Instead of tanking your ranking.
I just I guess there's a part of me that like just hopes, well, I can get rank up in the daily done at the same time.
Just trying to. It's that Diablo efficiency carrying over.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's blame it on that. And that is my stubbornness. And this past week, I've been playing a lot of Overwatch. And yeah, I love Reinhardt.
I was gonna ask, who's your guy over there?
Yeah, it is definitely.
Or woman.
Yep, Reinhardt all the way. I just walk, deploy shield, walk forward. I guess in some places it doesn't really require too much skill, but other than that, well, when you get like a play of the game with Reinhardt, it's like you had to work for it.
I was just gonna say, so one of the cool features is that those play of the game games. Anyways, the plural version of that. People tend to post them around when they're like really impressive. And I think it was a few weeks back on Twitter, someone posted a Reinhardt one, and it was like a 5-person kill on Reinhardt.
Because
it's disgusting.
They pushed them all off the cliff as they were exiting the base. I think it was.
Oh, I didn't see that one. It was one where it was like an actual legit kill. Like he killed one dude by like rushing into him.
Yeah.
He like did something to another, zipped over somewhere else. It was insane. He was all over the map.
But just like everybody else, I have no idea what the metrics that they gauge for play of the game, because there was one that I got play of the game. I was defending a point in Egypt, and I got a double kill, but it's like that was the play of the game. But I'm just sitting there thinking, there was another point when I was solo defending the point on like marker B at the end of the game where I got a triple kill. So it's like, what is the metrics behind this? I don't know.
Even though we're not talking about Diablo, but this kind of brings up another thing that I was noticing while watching League of Legends, because that's my like favorite thing to watch and not play. And one of the things that they have is after a solo queue game, you get a ranking for how you played on that character, and people have been trying to like data mine, like not even data mine the way we data mine, like looking patch like strings and things, but legit just like I did this during this game and I got this result. What did you do? And people are just like culling together these results because sometimes like supports cannot get high scores just because I think the it's heavily metered towards like kills, and
Mm-hmm.
supports obviously don't really get kills. So like you have these games where supports are like building offensive items and leaving their ADC to die, basically trying to get like an S plus rating. It's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But just
With
another thing where it's like how do they judge this stuff? How do they come up with things to judge this? And how do they make it cover, a wide variety of scenarios?
Yeah, and it comes down to it. Everyone only ever cares about damage, right?
Yep.
That's how it works. I mean, that's how that's. We're getting even further off topic now, but that's actually how I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. That I would always be the cleric to be the quote unquote healer, but like in uh 3.5 edition, they were like the best. I could outdo everyone at everything.
See, that I feel like that's less your fault and more the game, whatever it is that decides these
I'm gonna
stats.
yeah, it's like I'm gonna keep my team alive by killing everything else before it can damage anyone. That was how I played a cleric.
Seems balanced.
Exactly.
I mean, you say it's far off, but it kind of isn't though, because that was really the way that the game had evolved for quite some time. Like, remember, it was so hard for the devs to input mechanics and items into the game that made people care about defense. For the longest time, they were just like, "How do I get my DPS up?"
Hmm.
And it wasn't really until we got these scaling difficulties with greater rifts, I think, that defense really became pertinent.
Yeah, because at that point the mob's HP was just escalating up so much higher that you can't one shot everything and get away with it. You actually have to take a couple hits back.
Exactly. Exactly. So you've been playing Blizzard games. How about your Diablo experience? Anything going on over there?
Not much. I did load up the PTR and played around a little bit, but it's just like I want to give the Fist of the Heavens stuff a try, but I guess it's like for me it's just one of those. I'm never really big on PTRs to begin with, but just seeing all the disheartening information on how the new Fist of the Heavens stuff is working out is kind of like I really don't want to farm it up on the PTR and then have to do it again on live, so I'll wait.
That's
I'll wait and see if it gets buffed or anything else added in.
Yeah, you are. I think you're speaking the song of the people right now because I actually feel exactly the same way. Kind of transitioning over to my side of things, I guess. I did pop into the PTR as well after having some issues. So in case anyone else was having the same issue that I managed to solve, for some reason Discord and the PTR don't play nicely. So if you're getting this error where you boot up the PTR, it looks like it's about to load and then it just crashes. If you just quit out of Discord, it actually works fine. I don't know, like maybe it's part of this new like third party software detection thing that they've got going on, but
Hmm.
yeah, it just wasn't they weren't playing together very well. So just word to the wise in case you've been having issues with PTR. But yeah, like you mentioned, I got in there um, fully intent on doing Crusader things, and I told you this story. I guess I can tell it again for the live audience here that I got into the PTR earlier today and finally managed to find the belt for the Fist of the Heavens. We'll talk about some of the details on it, but it basically just buffs its damage up a little bit. And then I managed to craft a ancient dark light, which, as you guys might remember, is the one-handed flail that synergizes with Fist of the Heavens. And then I was looking at my character. I equipped the dark light. I cubed the belt for the power because it rolled literally the minimum power.
Hmm.
So this isn't gonna work. I'll cube it. And then I just logged out because I was like looking at all the options. I was like, there's nothing else that goes with this. Like this doesn't make sense. I could put it in the icon set, but I'm still missing so many slots of synergy. There's no shield. There's no there's I guess there is a belt, but there's no bracer. There's like nothing that like you need all these additional parts
And,
in order. Like
and
if you look at
I
sorry,
just
go ahead.
can't find shoes to match. It just is not the right color.
Exactly. I need more accessories to make my Crusader Fist of the Heavens Barbie pretty. And it's like you look at the support that like Blessed Shield has, right? Like there's a two-handed flail, there's a one-handed flail, there's a shield, there's bracers, and the powers on all of those are really significant. Like give you big multipliers,
Hmm.
give you no resource cost, give you more bounces than you would usually get. So it's kind of like doubling your output, if you will. And it's huge. And also, another thing to think about too is on the shield, for instance, you get like a huge bonus to the to the damage of the skill. Like there's that 200% blessed shield damage you can get, and all of that is missing from these Crusader items. So I mean, we're not doing a Crusader centric show or anything, but it is a bummer when you keep getting excited for change. Like they added in that flail last season, and that was going to like synergize well with the shield bash and the shield glare, and it was absolutely nothing. Like it was there and then it was gone. No one uses it at all.
Hmm.
So it's like, how many more failed Crusader items can we add before you just like accept Thorns as our overlord?
As your overlord and savior. And
No.
we had a lot of reason to be excited about these items that were getting added in because we've just been going for the last couple episodes, going and talking about wanting a Fist of the Heavens set,
Yep.
and then it's like all of a sudden it's here. It's like yes, and then darn. Oh well. I mean, we still probably have like what as we're a week into the PTR, we've got another like 2 months at least of the PTR. They might go through and redesign some stuff. They've already had um like some redesigns of items, at least like the Demon Hunter side of things. They redesigned the Demon's Demise. They shifted the bonus, from the two-handed crossbow over to the bracers, the Traggles bracers, which was like you click. I think it was click a
Health
whenever
well.
you health well. It also refilled your resources, which was like okay, whatever.
Yeah,
But
like lowered your
now,
cooldowns.
but yeah, now they're adding it as to the spike traps, which yeah, that's it's like they just with the PTR update that was just yesterday, they're buffing that to try and make it a bit more worthwhile for demon hunters.
Yeah, and you and I were messaging on this too when we first saw some of the notes on what was happening to Spike Trap and traps in general for Demon Hunters. And it seems like we're trying to figure out where does this fit, right? Like where will this skill kind of land within what the DHs can do? And it seemed perhaps to maybe be a good fit for Shadows
Yeah.
set, just because that's such a single target centric setup. It could benefit from some AoE, and then maybe, because the whole idea with the redesign is that you're going to have your traps that you can put out very quickly for a lower cost than it used to cost, and you actually activate them by using a spender.
Hmm.
So now instead of it being more reactive play, you can actually be active about your placement on them. They slow enemies, and then once you have like the right grouping, you can kind of throw out your impale, boom, set those traps off. You get some AOE. You're doing single target, so it could work out. But I don't know. I feel like what I've seen from the community so far has just been a lot of like head scratching as to what is the purpose of this? Where is it supposed to fit?
Hmm.
And like who is this targeting? Is it just there to say like if you want to do traps, they're a little better than they used to be, or is it supposed to shift the meta?
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see, and that's like with Crusaders. Crusaders with cons. You have the capability because it's just a generalist set. It's a damage buff, and you get to stay in, you know, Accurate's champion the whole time. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, and then how you build it from there would be entirely based upon what support items that you found or equipped or whatever build that you want to go through. But like with the spike trap buffs, like there's only one demon hunter set that could even fit it in at all, and that's shadows. Like it doesn't mesh with marauders. doesn't mesh with Unhallowed Essence. It doesn't have any synergy whatsoever with Natalia's, and it's like it can work for shadows, but the damage has to be there since it's just working off of the base damage buff that you get in the two-piece set bonus. But they keep increasing the amount of damage on the traps, and then with the redesign with the Demon's Demise, it'll trigger again after a second, so you get double the fun basically.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder because to some degree, it almost feels like the transition of the generalist set has kind of moved over to Legacy of Nightmares because technically the world is your oyster with that. Like the only slot really taken up are the two rings.
Hmm.
So if you have enough items that give you synergy, you could build, something around traps. But it doesn't even seem like there are enough things yet available. Like it kind of brings me back to the Fist of the Heavens issue. Like without more support items to kind of buff that playstyle, it's not going to fit into the generalist set that the Crusaders certainly have with the cons. But
Hmm.
it also certainly won't work in Legacy of Nightmares because now you're looking at many other slots that also have to be filled too,
Hmm.
outside of just wearing your normal like 6 piece of cons.
Yeah, very true.
So I mean, like you said though, this is still really early, right? Like we only saw the second update to the PTR, and then the PTR was only released last, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday.
Hmm.
So we still have a ways to go, and they seem to be intent on changing it rather rapidly in terms of updates. So hopefully we'll see more. Some people have even been saying because this was labeled, I haven't seen this labeling, but some YouTubers said that there was a 2.4.2a, so they thought that there might be a B coming as well too.
Hmm.
I haven't really seen the action around that, but that would be interesting. But assuming that this is what we have here, there's definitely more room for improvement, more room for tinkering. I think the only happy class that I've seen so far, you can tell me how you've been gauging the community, is the witch doctors. They actually seem happy with their changes. There's some stuff going on for sacrifice.
Hmm.
There were some changes. I should mention changes on skills that were seen mostly in the support meta. So for witch doctors, both piranhas and mass confusion, they can't stack with other sources. So the way I'm interpreting that is that their multiplying damage does not multiply the other multipliers of damage. So like if you have a barb who also got this similar change with their threatening shout, if they were to cast like threatening shout falter on an enemy, and then the witch doctor also does like a piranha's Paranado damage boost or whatever,
I, I
like
think
those.
I think this is more to do with this is it affects the Grin Reaper. It's because it can no longer stack with casts from other sources. So it's like you could have
uh,
either multiple witch doctors that are all going through and stacking on like piranhas for a 15, 30, 45% damage increase, or if you just have Grin Reapers equipped, you're gonna be throwing out like three sets of piranhas for the 45% damage bonus with just a single witch doctor.
okay, yeah, I hadn't
Yeah.
actually thought of reading it like that. That does make sense.
Yeah, that's what I believe that the change itself was intended to do. That it's so that way you can't have, either multiple witch doctors or like even multiple witch doctors all using Grin Reapers, to stack up that damage the damage modifiers on that to just obscene levels.
Hmm, okay. So there is that. Good call there, Mr. Nine. But the other side of things, when I was talking about happiness for the witch doctors, there was a huge change for Spirit Barrage in the Phantasm rune. So now its damage has been upped, and then they also added a legendary power onto the Gazing Demise, I believe. I'm kind of scrolling through the items here. Yeah, Gazing Demise. So they put a power on that where Spirit Barrage gains the Phantasm rune, and then for each active Phantasm, the damage of Spirit Barrage is increased by 40 to 50%. So it's, I don't know, a channeling kind of thing. Maybe now that'll be interesting for the witch doctors. I didn't really look into why they were so happy, but apparently people are pleased with the changes there, so that's good.
Yeah, I think it's because it's like you can have the maximum, like with the way that Phantasm works is it actually summons like a ghost at the location that you cast it at, and then it will channel the damage, instead of you actually like channeling the Spirit Barrage.
Interesting.
And so it's just passive damage that can go out. So you'll cast you'll cast like you can have up to 3 of the phantasms at once, and then with that with the way that they went and changed the item, you get a damage buff for each one that you cast. And so I imagine after you cast your 3, you restack the other 2, so that way they all have 150% damage bonus.
Very interesting. Yeah, that seems cool.
Yeah.
Something to mess around with.
Yep. But I,
Well,
I don't know like what type of build. I really haven't been looking too much into the witch doctors, even though I was kind of talking about going back and playing a witch doctor again for this next season. I haven't looked too much into them, so I don't know where that might be falling into, like what type of builds or how useful it'll be.
all right. I'll be curious to see.
Yeah, but that one would definitely be like a nice like single target buff at least, because you've got like the 3 phantasms that are doing the 750 damage over the 5 seconds, multiplied by the 150%, which I
Plus other multipliers.
yeah, well, the 150% for the gazing demise.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you were to go through and use that one, although I don't know if it's just going to add the 150% weapon damage to it or increase the weapon damage by 150%.
All right, well, that's what the PTRs were, right? Get in
Yep.
there and test it
Yep.
out. And just looking across the board at some of the other changes, obviously not going to list every change because also all these changes could change as
Hmm.
the PTR trundles on. But some of the more noteworthy things are them adding. There was a change originally to the sledge of Athscaling,
Hmm.
which is that two-handed mace that was never a furnace that you always found.
Yeah.
It had no power previously, and then they added a seismic slam, increasing the damage of your next 3 earthquakes within 15 seconds by 100%. But then they moved that power to the Girdle of Giants,
Hmm.
and they changed it as well. So now seismic slam increases your earthquake damage by 80 to 100% for 15 seconds. And existing earthquakes will have their damage increased when the seismic slam is used. So it actually is kind of reading um, it like updates it. It'll read
Hmm.
when you've actually used one, even if you have some earthquakes out already.
Yep.
So that could be a little buff to the Might of the Earth set, which is
Yep.
cool. I think that's probably the reason why that got moved to the belt, is because they already have kind of that dedicated two-handed weapon.
Hmm.
So makes sense. But that's like the only like that barb change and the one I mentioned before, threatening shout. That's like it. So people are like, "What about barbs? Do we exist?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because like you feel like some classes got a lot of their love and changes a long time ago, and now they haven't really been revisited. I feel like that was the case as a Crusader for a long time because they got so many tweaks when they were first introduced with Reaper,
Hmm.
and it feels like they left them alone for a while, and then the next big pass was when Thorns got redone. So we've kind of had like our second look, and now maybe it looks like Demon Hunter seems to be the most changed here, so maybe they're getting their next look here.
Yeah, yeah. You go through and you just kind of like fine tune each individual one. And I mean, Crusaders are actually in a decent place. So if you go and you look at like the solo leaderboards, for
Well,
the
and
seasons.
so that's the thing, right? Actually, this is something I want to expound on, probably in like a non Westmarch workshop video because it'd probably be like a 30-minute discussion. But I want to know what the intent is for the Crusader because the basic premise is right now Thorns rules the roost. If you're not using a Thorns build, then you're technically not competing
Hmm.
because you can get. I know we've gone on this tirade before, but you can get like max damage and maximum defensive stats just by equipping the set or the pieces the way you're supposed to and playing like the long bombardment or what potentially looks like it might be making a little bit of a comeback here too with invokers as well.
Hmm.
So like the thorn setups by nature are just better than anything else you can do as a crusader because the other sets, while they have been given like defensive buffs, and even in this PTR they're making the damage bonus from the Akon 6 piece increased, and they're also putting a little, and I say little, I mean
15%.
15%,
Does that remind you?
15%
Does that
damage
remind you
reduction.
of anything? Because there's something that I thought of when I first read that patch note change.
You had mentioned it last time when we were talking about like a little retrospective. It was oh, Crusaders, they're so tanky, they don't need a damage
They don't
reduction.
need damage reduction. Oh, okay. I guess they do kind of need damage reduction. We'll give you
15,
15%.
15%. So maybe we'll get to 30 is what you're saying?
Yeah, by the end of the PTR, it might be up to 30. It might be up
Oh,
to 30. So hold out hope. It's something
his,
to look forward to.
history has a way of repeating itself. That's why I actually hadn't thought of that until you mentioned it. That's funny.
Yep.
But like, so the idea is it just going to be thorns? Like, is that the future of the Crusader, or do they want non-thorn setups to also compete? Because I feel like if we really want to go the road of like multiple options, right now you have basically like two builds, but Bombardment is like the clear winner currently, and they've never done anything to really bring it down, so it's still winning. The only thing you
Winning.
could really do to make Thorns not as good is to nerf it. Like you would actually have to kind of pull it back, and I don't know how you would. This is what I've been trying to contemplate: is how do you bring Thorns like in line without like really changing how it actually works right now?
Mm-hmm.
Because it itemizes in its own fashion. It doesn't rely on crit and crit chance, which I think is really cool. I don't want to lose that part of it
Mm-hmm.
because it's really awesome to see items that just don't have those stats at all. But when you need them in a more traditional setup like a Blessed Hammer or a Condemn or whatever, it just really limits your ability to add more defensive bonuses where like basically you get them for free in Thorns. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And that comes down to not even just like the way that the items or anything that are designed. That comes down to the itemization system, where as soon as you don't need a couple of the affixes for damage, then oh, look at that, I'm so much more tanky, so I can actually not have to worry about res timers, or on hardcore, I can push further without having to worry about proccing and then sitting out of the rift for a minute or two. That is, I like you're mentioning, it's like I don't need crit or crit damage, so now I can put vit, all resist, or armor on so much of these extra slots on my gear, that it's like now I've got the survivability to, and so I can slowly make my way through these mobs and push like a couple rifts higher than the
Yeah.
person that has to have the crit and crit damage, that's taking out like all resist or vitality or armor or something on like the gloves, rings, what have you. Um, that sure, they might be able to do more damage, but if they're having to run back to town because of a proc, or they're having to wait for res timers on softcore, just that the other guy is still just going through and blazing through.
And even if you're like, oh well, who cares about defense? They can still add in other ancillary offensive situations too. Like area damage benefits greatly within bombardment, so that's why you saw people like taking condemn to kind of group things up and then use area damage to do even more.
Hmm.
So now you can throw area damage on where people are still having to make tough choices on crit hit damage, crit hit chance, strength of it, all your natural normal stuff. Um, and then I forgot my second point, but what you said is valid, and I want to like know developmental wise, like if this is what they want.
Hmm. Yeah.
We'll see.
Oh God, how many episodes could we do just going and talking about itemization? We should go and do, after, I guess maybe like when we get to the lull in season 7, we can go and do like an item retrospective between like Diablo 2 and like the big affixes back in the day.
Mm,
There's,
that'd be cool.
there's things that you had to worry about in Diablo 2, where I know specifically they've taken out of Diablo 3 because they wanted the readability to be easier, so you can go and you look at items, and you can better determine that this is an upgrade without having to go to a website or some third party thing in order to go and determine, well, what's the bigger damage increase and all that, when you go and start factoring in, minus enemy defense, and reduces enemy resistances, and
Attack rating,
yeah, all that,
FCR,
yeah,
yeah.
all that other fun stuff that you had to take into account. But then,
But I mean, so two things. So one, I remembered what I was going to say, and one of the it's kind of like a very specific case, but one of the inherent advantages in Thorn setups is that Iron Skin has a Thorns rune that like ridiculously multiplies your damage. So like, there's no reason you wouldn't ever have it.
hmm
And in builds that are more traditional, I keep going back to that, like more of your regular, hammers, etc. you might want to fit Iron Skin in, but it's usually at the cost of removing like Steed Charge or a
Mm-hmm.
Law or something else that was boosting up your damage or your utility or mobility. So you're already making sacrifices there. So like not only are you making sacrifices on gear, but you're also having to make sacrifices on skills. You just gain so much on the way, and you have to think about the way that it worked though, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it was built in a very specific way of like we are going to make thorns good. So they looked at like what's good, use that stuff and add thorns to it. So like there's no way it could fail.
Mm-hmm.
But is it too good? I think is kind of where that conversation rests currently. And what did you just say? Because I had something to reply to it.
Like the going and taking a look at the like some of the itemization stats that you'd had from Diablo 2, like
Oh
kind
yeah,
of.
yeah. So one of the things you mentioned was them making like the readability better,
Mm-hmm.
like not having to go to a third party place to figure out like is this an upgrade? Am I gonna have to look at some random stat that doesn't look like it actually factors into my damage to figure out if I do more damage? I think they actually accomplished that goal in D3
Mm-hmm.
because one of the more recent articles that they did was kind of that retrospective on readability of items and is it an upgrade?
Mm-hmm.
And the system has been simplified, maybe you could contest, to the point where it actually is pretty easy to make those looks at first glance. There are a couple of scenarios and affixes where it's a little murkier. Like we always talk about the weapons being one of those sticking points, or put in a calculator if the base damage or the 10% is going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
But we have so few instances of that I want to say if that was a goal for them, they definitely achieved it. But at what cost, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. When you want to go and you simplify a system, um, no matter how great or well thought out the system is, it does add a little bit of like kind of like creates it to be linear, and you take out some of the depth of the system. There's still with the experiment that they did with thorns, which it basically was an experiment. They wanted to go and create a way of playing the game that didn't rely upon crit and crit damage. That would kind of like be like kind of like break out of that mold that all DPS builds up until that point had fallen into. Um, but I don't know. It's like I guess it would depend. I don't see them making any big changes like that, for any future updates or possible expansions for Diablo 3. But if they hop into, like a Diablo 4, would that still be kind of like a design pillar? Would that still be one of the base concepts that they have, where the upgrades have to read well, or would you go more into, you know, like something that might push you, yeah, you might have to go and check like a third party site or a damage calculator to figure out what is absolutely best. Because they did a lot of the same thing in World of Warcraft. Like in Wrath of the Lich King, they introduced the armor reduction stat, which was a great stat, one of the best DPS increases that you could get for a lot of the classes. But it also was one of those ones you only needed so much, and you had to go through and determine, well, how much is good. And it got better the more you had, where it was or something, it was something along those lines. But it was like really mathy as to like how much you needed and what it was to be good, and then anything over a certain amount was useless. And just all that stuff, that it was a lot of math, and so they took it out. And then now in Warlords of Draenor, they introduced multi-strike, which is another one that was kind of like it was a damage increase, kind of RNG-ish a little bit, but doesn't necessarily give you like kind of like a direct increase. So this is how much like your damage is going to be buffed by, that you can look on your character sheet and see like how much my damage increased, and that's one they're getting rid of now again in Legion,
Hmm.
of going through and scrapping that. So, yeah, we'll have to see what mentality they take in the next iteration of the game.
I mean, one quick hit on that is if you move away from a system where you're so dependent on items to make or break your character,
Hmm.
and you go more to the skills mattering the most, and maybe even one thing that I see kind of brought up from time and again is the whole idea of that currency that might drop where you can upgrade your skills.
Mm-hmm.
So there was what was it, like a rune system or something where like you would be able to kind of level up, your smite or your blessed hammer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people were saying like that would be cool if that was maybe a design pillar or one of the things the next game was based on, because then skills matter more, and then you can make really fun items where they do wacky stuff, they have these powers, but you don't need to wait until you get X item
Mm-hmm.
before your build comes together, because you're already putting out good damage, you're already kind of getting your build, and you're mostly just adding ancillary power to it by finding more of these runes and leveling it up.
Yeah, that could be a different way, because that does remind me back in D2, casters only cared about plus skills
Yeah.
items because they your stats didn't increase the damage of your spells, so it didn't matter how much energy or strength or whatever that you had, it wasn't going to increase any of the damage of your teeth or bone spear or frozen orb, what have you. And even though like a melee character could get a damage increase from like a plus skill item, they didn't really necessarily go out of their way to making sure that they had like shit tons of plus skills. They still wanted to go through and make sure that oh, I've got enough attack rating, I have this damage buff, and I've got like you go through and find like deadly strike and crushing blow and all these other stats were more
Mhm.
important than making sure that your skills was like maxed out, like skill rank 60 or what have you. But I think that it would be cool if there was something that would be added into the game that allow us to I guess customize the strength of the skills, and just like kind of like thinking off the top of my head, like defeating Guardians would give you like a rune or something like that you could use towards skills that would up it, kind of like a legendary gem, and increase like the damage or like the duration or something of whatever it is that your particular skill did, up until a certain point, and have like that failure rate for it, so you could someone
They
that.
become like the new legendary gems.
Yeah, a legendary gem, or it could even be something like in another iteration of the game, replace the Paragon system. It could
Mm.
be, it's like every time that you gained a Paragon level, you got like one of those gemstones, or a skill point to spend to up one of your things. Like I do, there's still part of me that misses like the old skill trees. I fully understand, like why they were removed going into D3, and like why they were removed in World of Warcraft, because it does give you a bit more freedom, with what you can do with the skills, and not so much time having to spend balancing these talent trees. But I think that there still could be something, you could go and do with it, um, in order to make customizing your skills feel a little bit better, instead of just like, oh, I want to use spike traps, so I'm going to equip these bracers, and I'm done. You know.
Hmm. Or yeah, or wait for the developer to add more items for that. But like, what if you are nine ball, your jam is Fist of the Heavens. You
Mm-hmm.
can either scenario A, wait until they add more items because that skill, in order to do anything, is dependent on having supporting items. Or B, you go out and farm up these runes to level up that skill, and you just pour them into Fist of the Heavens because that is all you want to do forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
You are in control as the player of making that choice of which skill you want, rather than being dependent on the next patch or the next three patches before that set fully comes together.
Yeah. And then, of course, from the developer's side of things, it's like there's still always there's going to be one skill that just scales better than the others, and that one
Of
will
course.
go through and lead into the same problems that we have now, where people, like we were just talking about thorns, people only go and do the thorns builds, or not so much people only do the thorns builds, but they're just so much better because of their scalability and being able to get like the free survivability that allows you to stay alive and complete the higher greater rifts. With that system, there's going to be one, oh well, condemn already has such a high base damage that every one of these runes that I put into it gives me a larger increase on its output than any of the other skills, so why should I go and put it into anything else that's most efficient? So I mean that's something that would have to be considered in the system. Or maybe there's a cap, to each one of these skills, at how much you can
Exactly.
increase it. Or maybe some skills, like you pull up, I want to buff condemn, and it pulls up a condemned talent tree that I can put these runes in that increases its damage or decreases the cooldown or decreases the skill cost or increases the radius. Or I can put like these runes in that instead of having um, the actual runes that we have now for the skill, I could put like a combination in there, like a rune word or whatever, on the skill that would give it the different effects that would
Hmm.
cause it to pull in enemies. Or maybe I can throw in enough at it that it will like pull in enemies and reduce the cooldown, and all those other types of stuff.
Yeah, I mean the more, and that's the thing. I think you're kind of getting at this interesting point where it becomes a developer nightmare because
Hmm.
you have to have at that point maximums so you can know what a fully like condemned out character would look like,
Yep.
right? So that way you can say, okay, when someone loves condemned to the point where they max all this crap out, how much better is that than, Johnny Appleseed who loves Smite and just
Yeah.
maxes the crap out of Smite?
Hmm.
And, do we, first of all, do we even want those to be equal? Or are we gonna, is there going to be a world where like it's a generator versus a spender? So generators are never going to be equal anyway? Or is
Hmm.
it going to be like, here are these core skills? Maybe they cut down on the amount of skills. You only take 8 core skills, but you make it so that by the time they're all maxed, yeah, they still operate differently, but they kind of have the same level of power output. And like you said, there will always be one that the players are going to figure out is just slightly better, so people will gravitate towards that. But at
Hmm.
least if you are trying to be in control of your character and kind of like getting back to the fantasy of an RPG, like I am creating this thing that I want to just be my fantasy,
Hmm.
it kind of feeds into that. Even if you know it's not going to be the best, you spent your time building it up, so you can't really be upset.
Yeah, I think this kind of like will tie into it. I am taking, um, something that Quinn had kind of mentioned in one of his videos, but it's like, dang it, the like versatility of like farming builds, and like the going through and with this patch adding in like the torments 11, 12, and 13, you're
Which,
you're
by the
gonna
way,
do,
there are now. You were right. Okay, they
yeah.
added more torment levels. I bow to my
It,
genius
it
nine ball.
it's just one of those things. It's like the reasoning that they made Torment 10 was because we were getting so much higher and greater rifts that they wanted to make it as if regular rifts still felt relevant for something other than just getting keys. So it just made sense that now that we're in like to the stratosphere of greater rift levels, well, they just increase the torment levels again to keep that kind of ratio going. But it's like the increasing like that difficulty because it got to the point where, like with Torment 10, almost any build or whatever it is that you use is just going to one shot everything on the screen. So I'm just going to go with the one that's fastest. It's like which one
Yeah.
can either let me move fastest or which one can go through like Demon Hunters with Unhallowed Essence. I can literally hit everything on the screen with multi shot. So that's just gonna be like the de facto going to for
How fast
farming.
can you kill the screen? Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's by increasing the difficulty and increasing like the HP and such and making that bar just a little bit higher, you'll open up the ability to make things, well, there's more viability for different farming, like for the different farming specs. So something might be a bit more interesting. It might clear like 1% slower or whatever, but it opens it up.
Yeah. I think like I can see pros and cons for it. Like the reason I was saying I didn't want it necessarily, something I hadn't even thought of, but with the speed farming in mind, at T10 right now, you can pretty much run, I think you were kind of saying this, you can run like anything really, but there's going to be something that's like 1% better, makes you move a little bit faster. So that's probably going to be like what you go to, right, for your class.
Hmm.
That isn't preventative though from you just saying like I want to do a lightning monk. I don't know, some skill that's not used for my speed farm T10, and because T10 is the bar at that point, you're just gearing around kind of like how do I get to the point where it feels comfortable enough to do T10 and I feel like I'm doing something. And now with T13 being the bar, I think it might just take longer. So like, Johnny Appleseed, I don't know why that's my guy tonight, but Johnny Appleseed, casual player, really likes Smite. He just loves Smite, right?
Hmm.
And so he wants to make his Smite speed farming build, but now it's going to take him, 15 greater rift levels more of effort to make it work in T. And maybe Johnny Appleseed shouldn't be in T13, right? But whenever you have a new ceiling, I feel like everyone is always striving for that ceiling because they feel like if they're not there, they're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So even though T10 was the jam right now, like it's not getting worse. There's just better stuff than it in the future. But you're going to want to be like, well, everyone else is doing T13. I want to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just pushes more like random builds out of the mix of possibility unless you really put love into them. But then at some point you might actually ask yourself, why am I putting so much effort into this when I could just do UE, I could just do thorns, I could just do blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it'll work out fine. Honestly, I think there probably will be enough power creep to the point where like it won't even matter all that much. Like everything will still be able to clear T13 quickly. Like even no changes to my DH when I went into the PTR, doing T13 felt a little slower, but it didn't feel like astronomically slower. So it's still going to be pretty quick, especially on the builds that were already kind of like prime speed farmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to round out too on PTR stuff because there. So first of all, there are a decent amount of changes, even though it is a small patch. I think we mentioned that there are a decent amount of changes, and we haven't even touched the wizard yet. And if you are a wizard fan, get it in now while it's hot, because it's going to be cold next season. And you can, depending on what side of the coin you're on, you can look at it as they're fixing all the bugs that were like riddled throughout the whole wizard schema of sets and interactions and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
they're actually getting to the point where they should have been all along. You can look at it that way, or you can look at like, oh man, all my toys are being taken away, and like they just can't figure out how Firebirds is supposed to work. Blah blah blah. In lieu of them taking all these things away, what it seems to be an interesting experiment is they are finally trying to make ranged wizards work. So they added a power onto Starfire, which is a wand, I believe, for wizards. Where now, where is it here? Yeah, Starfire legendary power added. Lightning damage done is increased by 15% for every 10 yards that you are from the target. So it's kind of like a built-in Zystone of Vengeance
Mm-hmm.
into this wand legendary power. And then obviously it's targeted just at lightning, so it'll be interesting to see kind of what skills are better for that from range. But then they also, within this most recent PTR change, took away power hungry, which a lot of players are like, oh my god, power hungry, like now we'll never be able to twisting wizard anything anymore. And apparently like the top echelon of wizards weren't even using power hungry
Yeah.
anymore. This is something Wyatt pointed out. But what they did do with it is make it so that you actually get some more synergy for your ranged builds that you can potentially put together. And the change is that where are you?
Power hungry, for those that don't know, it used to be that whenever you're healed by a health globe, the next arcane spender that you would cast is free, and you can have up to 10 stacks of it.
Mm-hmm.
The new change that they've done is that you deal 30% additional damage to enemies that are more than 30 yards away.
There it is. So yeah, that's obviously feeding into this whole idea of ranged wizard might be a thing, and people have been asking for it forever. So I'll be
Yeah,
curious to see how it looks by the end of the PGR.
yeah, this is actually going back to something that Flux used to go on about oh so long ago. He liked playing sorceresses in D2, and the reason why he fell in love with demon hunters, or at least fall into the niche of playing demon hunters in D3, was solely because it's the only ranged class.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can play a ranged wizard, like if you want to, it won't be any good, but it's like all of the great wizard builds were like melee range.
Melee, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like if you wanted a ranged class, you only had the demon hunter.
And one of the big issues there was because they're one of their best passives. The wizard is kind of notorious for not having many great passives. One of their best ones was Audacity, which gave you a damage boost when enemies were within 15 yards of you. So there was never like the convex to that, the opposite of when I'm further away, I get a damage boost. So now that this exists, maybe it'll at least encourage people to try it out and see if they can get some builds working.
Yeah. So yeah, it's this will definitely be the patch to lament the loss of Arcane Twister.
Yep.
Wait for it.
Hopefully, anyways, because I think honestly, I think a lot of people, if they ask themselves, do they want to twist again for the third season in a row?
Uh,
Pretty sure the answer is no.
yeah. And so they're finally fixing the bug that they said that they fixed, but they hadn't. Yeah,
Yeah,
where the Twister Sword. Which one was it? The What was the
what's
name of
that?
the Twister Sword?
I think it's called the twist, like the twisted sword or the twister sword or something. I think that's literally the name of it.
Something like that. It's close
Yeah,
enough. It's like it was supposed to cap at eight stacks of the buff, so you only got the damage increase for the first eight twisters that you cast, but that ended up not being the case. And that was still
yeah.
bugged and just kept stacking and stacking and stacking.
It was an uncapped cap.
Yes. And after all of our many lovely conversations about the Paragon system, we know how bad that can be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uncapped caps, not the.
Caps can be a good thing.
This is true.
Yep.
It's true. And just rounding out PTR changes real quick, some things that people will actually be very interested in is that they're making some very nice quality of life changes when it comes to farming. So for Infernal Machine drops, the rates have been adjusted across the board. You'll get a 50% chance for a machine to drop on Torment 1, and it scales up to 100%. You heard it here first, 100% on Torment 4 to
Mm-hmm.
get a machine. So you will be guaranteed a machine T4 and up, and then beyond that, you'll get increased chances for a second machine to drop from 5 to 13. So I'm guessing at 13 it's like all but gear. Actually, I have testing results from this. I ran it a little bit, and on most of my runs, I would say 3 out of 4 were dropping 2 on T13.
Hmm.
So it was pretty solid to get 2 on T13, which is awesome. And then on the other side of this, Greater Rift keys, they are now guaranteed from any Nephilim Rift, no matter the difficulty. And now the difficulty scaling up just increases your chance for getting a second key or a third key. What? 3
Yay!
keys.
Yeah.
And this instance seems a little rarer because I was running a few Nephilim rifts, and I would think I got like 3 keys to drop, like one out of every I don't know 5 times. But I mean, I didn't run like you need lots of data to figure out exactly what the rate is,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people who are trying to cull community data together to get results for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like a rarer instance to get the 3, but like guaranteed 2 for sure on T13.
Yeah. Which is nice because that was always like one of the worst feelings. I'm just gonna farm out like 10 keys real quick. 7 runs later, oh god, it's like
I only have 7 keys.
I only have 7 keys.
Right.
Uh,
Yep. Something also, so just a couple more quick changes, but another thing that's kind of flying under the radar, but that's really interesting. They've rescaled, I guess is the word for it, the way that gaining gold works basically from like rifts and greater rifts. So basically, how do I explain it? Like you, instead of it being like this exponentially growing amount, and then on the same side, this exponentially growing amount for empowering your greater rifts, it's scaled to like this 3% increase across the board. So if you look, for instance, if you look at empowering a greater rift 80 today, costs something like billions of gold.
mm-hmm.
On the PTR, it's like 12 million. So we're talking like a huge change to the way this works. But what's happening is that you're going to get less gold overall. But when you're in T13, and this is kind of what was happening before, was I think we had even talked about this as a topic on the show at one point. You would have to do like a ton of T13 farming or T10 farming just to get enough gold to like empower one GR70.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did like 3 GR70s, you could empower one GR70.
Yeah.
Now, someone computed it. I was reading quickly through Reddit earlier today. You would do like one Torment 13 Rift, and it's giving you the same equivalent as you would get out of a GR60. So you could actually go and empower off of your T13 runs like legitimately high level GR. So the idea is that next season we actually will probably be empowering more rifts than we don't. Like we'll have more gold overall, even though less of it will be coming in, but the cost of empowering is going to be lower. So and I think it was Quinn actually might have said this, this may or may not hurt our gold sink, because if the cost is so like unprohibitive, then we
Mhm.
might actually just end up with more gold than we need over the course of the season.
Yeah,
Trying to
because
find.
it was the empowering costs were scaled to how much gold you should get from the rift itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was something. I think it was supposed to be something along the lines of like, I'm trying to remember from BlizzCon. It was like 10 or 11. It's like
Oh no, I think it was
it,
3.
it was
Like,
3. Okay,
yeah, every third run you should be able to empower the next one.
gotcha.
Yeah. So it's a good change, and also like Longshot's mentioning in chat, like it actually brings things like the vaults back into relevance, because you would get such a modicum amount of gold out of a vault or like a gilded baron, especially after the nerf to those,
Hmm.
to the point where you're like, it's like a drop in the bucket. It's not going to matter. But now you'll actually be pretty happy to go and do your vaults, because now you'll be able to empower 5, 6, 7 GR high level GRs off of that.
Hmm.
And one thing I really liked was they added a hotkey to remove the UI, so you can actually just take like these really pristine screenshots without any of the built-in skills or your portrait frame or any of that, which is kind of cool, especially for like content creators if you need to make good images or screen grabs.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about from PTR, unless there were other things you wanted to get into.
No, I think that that about sums it up as far as the PTR stuff goes. Because I mean, we covered a lot of them without even having like dip into some of the comments that Wyatt made about the PTR changes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a lot of the things that he had to say was just like don't like overreact to data mine nerfs. A lot of them are just like going through and adding like a variance. So instead of being like always rolling 100% skill damage, it can now roll like 80 to 100. And some of the other things like this cap was always there. It's just now part of the tooltip, and just things like that. Nothing big.
Exactly. And there were some more quality of life things too, like the type of pylon that you have has a map icon now. So like you'll see a little Harry Potter lightning bolt over the conduit one, for instance. You're like, oh, when you see it spawn on your map, you're like, oh, that's conduit. Perfect. So instead of like right now, in order to save time, like a lot of what you'll see in high level GR clears, people will literally like pause the game, like try and get their mouse to hover over the pylon,
Hmm.
unpause the game, see what the pylon is, pause it again, think about it. So at least now like cuts down on some of that having to like save time.
Yeah, is it worth it running over there to try and get that pylon through that army of like hammer demons?
Exactly. Exactly. So good stuff, and of course more things probably coming. There are also some undocumented changes, like the quick upgrade for the gems is back. It's not as fast as it was, but it's faster than it is.
Which is a welcomed improvement.
Most certainly.
Yep. Oh, well, I guess because Longshot was mentioning it and it's in the show title, we might as well talk about it. The Banwaves.
Bandwaves.
Yeah.
Baddies, get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about, I want to say, a few weeks into this season, the idea of, we saw like 5 bandwaves in a row at the end of season 5, and it was awesome. It was great. It was so good for player morale. But our criticisms of it were they better keep doing it so that it's not just this like specter of like, oh, we did it once, like, and we haven't done it in a year, but hey, you never know. Like if it's a continued threat, it'll cut down on the players that just even consider doing it, because they'll know like Blizzard is like actively watching. Blizzard is ready to pounce on you and get your cheating ass out of here. So like it's good if it keeps occurring, not at necessarily a regular interval where they can like account for it, but just like know that it can happen, and it will happen at some point during a season. And the other pitfall was, okay, you did it, but it's like how many more weeks left in the season? Like 3, 4. And one of the And of course, that had upsides and downsides too, right? Like one of the upsides was, oh, now they can't rebuild in time to make like a good push or get an account back up to high Paragon to compete with, the legitimate players who were doing it all along.
Mm-hmm.
The downside was some players who had kind of thrown in the towel early on from seeing the botting go unchecked weren't able to then kind of come back and take
And
advantage of.
capitalize on it because they were already so
Exactly.
far behind.
Exactly. So now, when these bands came in, pretty much mid-season, like there was one last week and then one a week before that. That's huge because yeah, we're in the middle of the season right now, kind of getting towards the tail end here.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a clear picture of where it is exactly that you stand without any sort of inflated, GRs from people who are doing suspect things. And now you can really say, all right, well, I know exactly where I stand. I need to buckle down here because I have a shot at this top 10 or top 25 or whatever your goal is. You can see clearly in front of you what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I want to say, I didn't actually like go and check in, but there was someone in one of the bands from last week. This is the second band that was going and talking about like just taking a look at the European boards. Like 10 of the top 15 wizards was banned in the second wave.
Yeah.
How much that's going to go through and push people up.
It's crazy. Yeah. And one interesting thing, I was listening to the Diablo podcast, Flux and crew, and Nerdward's because he's our, perennial wizard always playing that class, he's kind of keen on what's going on in terms of leaderboards because he's looking at them actively. And he noted that this time around, after these couple of bans, and who's to say that there won't be more? So it's kind of hard to compare it because we had 5 waves last time and tons of people were being removed. But he said at least this time around, he didn't move up as much as he did last season. So it either begs the question of have they just not banned as many, have they not done as many actions
Uh-huh.
yet?
Or is there not as many people to do actions against?
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. And we kind of hope it's the latter because that means that the ecosystem is kind of policing itself.
Yeah.
Or the quitter, or the cheaters just quit.
We Who knows? It could be a perfect world, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so uh, but I guess there is the one thing like with this recent ban wave, you always go through and hear it, from a lot of people, "Oh, I did nothing and got banned." But I guess we were hearing a bit more like this season, like the belly aching from people that flagged as like false positives or something like that.
Yeah, some people were noting, the infamous numlock trick,
Yeah.
which people have made videos on, and it's a pretty widely spread. Do you want to call it an exploit? Do you want to call it a manipulation of the system, the manipulation of the way keyboards work? I don't know. I don't personally use it just because I don't want any potential action against my account at all. Rather safe than sorry.
Yep.
And I love jamming my hand on my keyboard all the time, so why not? Um,
Yep.
so I don't know. Some people were saying that potentially that was the reason they got banned, and then some people were saying like, "Oh, you're crying wolf because you actually know you botted, but you want to like stir up the pot against some other stuff and get people worried or whatever." And
Hmm.
it's hard to know what to believe because Blizzard is pretty mum on these things.
Yeah, and it's one of the unfortunates is they kind of have to be because
Yeah.
how much do you tip your hand to let the botters know what it is that you're looking for detecting or how you're detecting it? But I honestly from just some of the things that because Blizzard has talked about like the numlock thing in the past, I don't want to say that's a bannable offense because at that point, it's not how would you actually be able to determine that I don't actually have my finger down on the key the whole time?
Mm,
You know?
yeah. Even and then I guess that was kind of like something. I guess we heard about it more last season when you're talking about false positives. Like some people were saying their like keyboard software or mouse software was triggering some potentials for actions against their account
Hmm.
because some things like automate clicks or presses or things like that. And so
Yeah.
it is kind of one of those things where like you know
There.
harmless technology that was not invented to cheat,
Hmm.
like sometimes it falls into that gray area of like, yeah, if you click this left side mouse button, it also clicks your left click or something.
Yeah, that was actually one of those things that I remember specifically coming over from Final Fantasy XI to World of Warcraft back in the day when I first started playing, is that uh, you had keyboards where you could set up macros where I press this key and it will hit like it'll hit like my 4 key, wait 5 seconds, and then hit
Mm,
another key. And so you could actually do like entire rotations just through the click of a key, and in World of Warcraft that was bannable. You weren't allowed to do that. It's like it was specifically flat out said you cannot have multi-button click macros set up on your
macros.
keyboard, whereas in Final Fantasy XI you could. And that was like one of those ones where it's like when I was playing a black mage, I'd have my entire debuff thing set up. I could press one button, and then I would cast all of my debuffs, poison, blind, all that stuff right in a row, and then I could go to casting my regular spells. But it was also nice for like that one, if you wanted to cast an ancient spell and get like the quickening or whatever it was, I forget what it was, what the term was, but for like the combo chains that you do with other players, because it's like a 10-second cast time. You have a macro that it will call out,
Uh,
you begin casting it. And then it has the countdown built into the macro where it will call out when they start their chain, because you had to cast like so much in advance, before they actually started. And if your timing's off by like more than a second or two, so instead of having to sit there like start casting the spell and then quickly like type it in after you like count it down, you just had a macro for it.
automated it. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's an interesting thing because even like I like Shepard's simile allegory in chat where it kind of considers the numlock thing to be like cruise control, and I think Blizzard very much wants you to drive your car, right? Like
Hmm.
it's something that comes with your car. It's not necessarily like you installed some aftermarket product to make your car, more efficient, better, faster. But that's the thing, right? Is if it was already there to begin with, and people figured out, oh, this is what this button does, and they use it, can you then like go back and say, oh, well, we never condemned it outright, but you're using it now and we don't like it anymore, so you're out of here.
Hmm.
It calls into question some, and I think even someone had noted that Blizzard in the past had like highlighted some builds and things,
Hmm.
and some of them like had videos that were actively using like numlock and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, Blizzard even supported it. So
And I guess for those that don't know what the numlock trick is, it's this really only applies to like channeled spells. It's really big, like say in Natalia's for strafe. Instead of holding down strafe the entire time and like going and clicking everything else while also still just continually holding down strafe, what it does is when you use numlock, that if you press a skill such as like your one key and hold down numlock and then let go of the one key, it doesn't trigger the fact that you have let go of that key. The game still thinks that you have the key held down because numlock removes the signal that it sends that the key has been let go. And so we'll just hold down that skill the entire time until you press strafe again. So it's just something that allows you to go through and continue to play the game without giving yourself carpal tunnel, having to hold down like your right click or your left click key with strafe the entire time, while having to go and mash, all your other skills in sequence.
mhm,
That's what the numlock trick is. It just
right.
is. It's a way of using the functionality of how the numlock key works on the keyboard to kind of trick the game into thinking that you're holding down the key the entire time. But that's like one of those ones where it's like how, like, as far as that being bannable, I don't really see, because it's like, how do you know I still don't actually have the key to press the entire time?
Right. Unless Blizzard's utilizing your webcam to check on your hands, and then you're getting into some deep Big Brother stuff.
Yep.
The truth is out there.
Mhm.
But I hope, in general, besides this controversial part of it and whatnot, this is a positive thing, that they're continuing to ban stuff and keep an eye on that. And if you look across the board, actually, you highlighted something in Twitter today, actually, where there was a person on the Heroes of the Storm forums
Yes.
And I love that because they were talking about like, oh, I did nothing, and then this person actually, we have some chat logs, and you were being a dick.
Yeah, it's like I got it's like I got reported for telling people that they were reported. It's like what type of screwed up system is this? And then of course they went through and actually the CM pulled their chat logs and showed them specifically some of the things that they had put out in public for everyone to see. All the expletives that they were using. While they were supposedly all they said was, "Oh, you're reported." You know.
Yep. And it's just I think it's a stance that Blizzard is really. I'm kind of like tinfoil hatting here a little bit, but I think they're trying to take their esports like super serial, and with that in mind, I think they're really behooved and motivated to keep their games as clean as possible, because if they have really pristine environments for like pro players and aspiring pro players to play in, then you retain that high level of competition and can further propel the esport and the money making machine that it's becoming. You look at Overwatch, right? And there are people who have like wall hacks, you can see through walls, and auto aimers and things like that. And these people are getting banned for life. Like they're buying additional copies after getting banned, and they still cannot play the game. Like there's something within the way that they're committing these bans where like it detects that it is you, it is the person you, like your DNA can no longer play Overwatch. Like it's crazy. So I don't know. It's a very extreme measure, but I think it's kind of cool to see them really crack down on that over there. And obviously an increased presence of banning in Diablo, and Hearthstone was always a very policed game too, with like win trading and things like that. So it's good to see.
Yeah. No, it's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Oh. I guess now's the time when we get into like some of the do we want to continue going through like the good news, or do we want to drop down into some of the bad news?
I think I think I see where you're going with this. I think let's do the good news. Oh, let's do it this way: a return and a
Oh,
leave.
there we go. Okay, we could do that. We could do that.
All right.
All right. You want to take the return?
I will take the return, especially because I kind of feel a kindred connection with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, drum roll, blah, 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 blah. Worst drum roll ever. Playaway Thursday is returning. Woo! And you guys may remember the stalwart, hardcore Westmarch Workshop fans will remember. I think it was actually before I was on the show. Maybe it was right around the time I got on the show. I can't remember. I got my build featured on the very first Playaway Thursday, so I kind of love this series. That was back when it was called Theorycraft Thursdays
Yep.
for
We
you
won't talk.
OGs.
We won't talk about that. They buried that name.
That's right. So Player Way was a really built up thing where players could submit their builds. There was a competition wherein after about 4 weeks, there were builds that were highlighted per class. People would put them in. So, she would do she, Nevelistis, who owned this project, would do a rotation of like Monk, Wizard, Crusader, Barbarian. And then those four would be pitted against each other in a vote by the community. Community would vote, and then that one lucky person who got the most votes would then get a chance to go on a live stream on the Diablo account with Nevelistis, another community member typically, and a developer. Like Don Vu was on there, Wyatt Cheng was on there, Travis Day, some of the really big names, and then even some really cool people who weren't like, in the development scene that names we saw all the time, some story people, artists, things like that. So it was a really cool way to kind of just, dig into this person's build, see it in action, and also just kind of like watch people play the game like you would on a normal given night on Twitch. The sad news that's coupled into this is that that part is going away. The streaming component won't be a part of it anymore. However, you will still be able to see the build in action, because now one of the requirements of a submittal is having a little video that showcases how the build plays out, how it works, etc. But yeah, you can now resubmit builds. There's a web form that Nevelistis has built out, and you can go in, throw all the skills in there. She said it's going to continue to see updates while the economy of things is changing. So like inclusions for legendary gems, cube powers, because there's so many things now that weren't there when Player Way was like in its heyday. So it's kind of interesting to see, have to catch up a little bit. But yeah, so listing everything out that you could possibly think of for your quirky, cool, fun builds. The idea here is we're not going after the meta. Those builds are highlighted by players all across the world on YouTube, etc. You can find those builds if you want them. They're very easy to be found. But here we're kind of trying to discover just some of the things like, you really, Johnny Appleseed is back and he really wants to
I
show you.
missed that guy.
Don't you love that guy? He really wants to show you his Fist of the Heavens build that he made work, even though it only clears GR 70 or something.
Mhm.
And this is the place where it can be showcased. And this is where you'll get to kind of just figure out some new stuff and maybe get inspired yourself.
Yeah. Oh crap! Now I want to go through and level a Crusader and submit the Fist of the Heavens build, so that way it just gets included in there. It's like it lives. It wants to live. It wants to live.
Give it life, man. So, yes, these will come out on Thursday, believe it or not. But it's bi-weekly. So the next
Just like our show.
what? She copied us,
Totes.
man.
What a dick.
And she actually is on the same schedule as us currently, because the very first one of this return is coming out tomorrow,
Yep.
the 23rd, yes, of June. So you'll see that very first one, and you'll see what the new format looks like and everything like that, and then you'll see the next one in July.
Yeah, I can't wait to go through and see it and how the format itself has changed. And the one question I have is like, is it gonna be like the players' video that they like want you to like you want they want you to submit a video that they'll showcase as part of the article, or is it Nevelis just going and creating a gameplay video of that particular build and then narrating it?
Ooh, I didn't think about that actually. I just saw a gameplay video and I just assumed we would have to make that. But yeah, actually,
Yeah. Well,
she probably will because
yeah, I don't know like what I can and can't say, but I remember having some discussions with her when Play Your Way was going away a while ago. Is that was one of the ideas of going forward was to like go and she would make like little gameplay videos for it.
well, I know that's her jam. Actually, I think
Yeah.
she used to tell us that, and one of the things she went to school for was like video design and voiceovers and things. So
Hmm.
I'm sure she gets to leverage those skills. She'll be super happy. So now that you mentioned that, it probably will be the way. I guess, and that makes sense too because not everyone has software and things to make videos. So maybe making that a requirement could be a little too stringent.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I guess we'll see tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna find out one way or another, aren't we?
There we go.
All right. And of course, with the good news, such as like the awesome return of the Play Your Way Thursdays, we do have a little bit of bad news. Brian Kindergan, who is like the lead story designer for Diablo 3, well, Reaper of Souls, I should say, is he's has continued a kind of like what seems like a never-ending string of developers leaving the D3 team. And he Diablo wasn't the only game that he worked on. He also did a lot for StarCraft, Heart of the Swarm. Um, but it's really interesting. He posted this on his personal blog, which is briankindergan.com, and there is a part two to this. So his story isn't yet done, but he wanted to go and talk about like some of his reasons for leaving. And what I took from it, like, even though you have someone that's going through and leaving the team, he went and mentioned that like he's worked at Blizzard for 7 years. This is like the longest job that he's ever worked at one place in particular, and I think that actually goes to like go and say a lot that if someone that's kind of like used to hopping around between different jobs, especially like creative talents like artists, writers, they don't like being locked into the same thing. They want to explore different venues which to go and apply their craft that if it's managed to go and hold his interests for 7 years before he felt that he needed to like stretch his wings. I think that's a really cool sign, and this is something that you'll see at any major corporation. Like you'll have like a lot of higher. We see a lot of these people, that are big names in the game, and so that has a little bit more precedence because these are names we're familiar with when they leave. But how many other, smaller like associate developers and designers or programmers, come and go like within Blizzard or other companies. I think we talked about this, like the whole like Rockstar type
Yeah,
thing. It's like how many can you name how many developers have left, Bethesda, after Skyrim was made, type thing that were
yeah,
responsible for the game. It
yeah.
just is like these are people who are important to us, but that doesn't mean that like the game is dead or development is over. There's going to be other people that are coming in to fill those shoes. They're still going and actively hiring for some unannounced project on the Diablo team. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's definitely best of luck because he was a really cool guy. If you could go back and find some of the interviews that he's done, at BlizzPro, we Eldorian had a couple of interviews with him, as did Twiz. There's also the old um, uh, Diablo anniversary live stream that he did with Leonard Borowski, talking about like the game and the story development and such. I'm there too.
This guy,
Just throwing that out there on
waiting
that
for it.
stream. Um, yeah, yeah, it's one of those things.
I'll be curious to see the part two because it sounds like he might announce what his next thing is.
Hmm.
And, tinfoil hat, right? Leonard left as well.
Yep.
And Jay Wilson left and noted that he was going to go back to his love of writing, right?
Hmm.
So I think the three of them are going to get together and write something. What?
That'd be pretty cool. That
It
would be
would be
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm making that up. I have no idea.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah.
I guess if we do,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna more legitimate, if you can even have a legitimate tinfoil hat. One of the things that we were talking about, kind of offline on this conversation piece, was what does this mean like overall, right? So if
Hmm.
Diablo is moving in a brand new direction, like a D4 that we kind of have been leaning our hats on, then that kind of suggests that it might be time for people who form some of the older quote unquote stories of Diablo. If they're gonna bring in like new blood or like go in a completely different direction or
Hmm.
just something that doesn't tie to really what's happening with D3, it could be a good time actually to part ways and say, all right, well, this project I've seen it through, it's not continuing or it's changing in a way that when I signed on, I kind of envisioned this going and now it's going in a different direction and that doesn't vibe with my direction. So maybe it's a good time to just, part ways on friendly terms or even, I don't know, maybe not friendly terms, who knows. But it just kind of makes me again go kind of like, I see some more trends here, and I'm wondering if it really is this like changing of the guard, where not like an out with the old, in with the new, in like a derogatory kind of way, but
Hmm.
maybe it really is like this shift.
Yeah, that they kind of want to go through, and there's maybe certain goals or things that they want to accomplish that they feel, it's like, oh, maybe it's just not gonna maybe it's just not gonna work out, or maybe it is, on the other side of it where Blizzard is shifting, what it is they want to do, and it's at that point, some of like the creative writers and such are like, it's like, you know, this isn't exactly how I want to write or the direction that I would take it. So, it's nothing wrong, but I'm gonna go and find another, venue to write for, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though like last year when Mickey Nielsen left, he was one of the heads of the creative team at Blizzard, across all of the franchises and, their IP development and books and stories. And, he left, purely because he wanted to get more personal with his writing, write his own memoirs, which if you don't know about like his background or story, it's like there's, he was kidnapped as a child and all those other types of stuff. Like his life is basically like a movie. Um, but it's yeah, there's, people move on for their own reasons, especially when you deal with creative types. I don't want to stereotype creative types and such, but it's like a lot of the them are tend more towards change than doing the same thing over and over. And so a lot of times you'll find them going and hopping between different jobs. You'll go and look at, a whole bunch of fantasy writers, and they change genres and write for different types of genres all the time. Sometimes it'll be fantasy, sometimes it'll be like sci-fi, high fantasy, low fantasy, like a horror or drama. It's like Stephen King, you know, Green Mile,
Mm-hmm.
The
He's
Shawshank
had some
Redemption.
range. Yeah,
You sometimes you just change things up. You just gotta. The same thing is boring after a while.
that's true. Of course, we wish him well. We wish Brian well, and we wish everyone who has recently left well. And we'll see. It could certainly be change for the better for them, and change for the better for whatever is next. And fresh ideas are always good, and it makes more than anything. Not sky falling on my side personally. I see more potential than anything else of good things to come.
Definitely, especially when and it's never if they. This also kind of gives more credence to like the whole, like Diablo 4 theory. It's a perfect time to go through and like to go and look for new writers and stuff like that because maybe they saw it as the opportunity. Oh well, you're going on to another game. Well, this was a perfect time for you to get new blood. I don't feel as compelled to have to stay to finish this project through that I've worked on so much. Now I can part ways and not feel bad, and you can get new talent in here to write the next story, how they want it to be written.
Definitely.
Hmm.
All right, and I guess rounding up the news, there was one fun article that Nevilistus dropped on us last week, and this one was a developer insight that went behind the Goblin Giggle. And the idea here was kind of talking about sound design
Hmm.
and the idea that each monster, based on how it looks and how it acts, interacts with the environment, with the character, kind of starts to grow a life of its own. And Nevilistus did some interviews with some of the sound design supervisors. Seth Lawrence is one of the main names in here,
Hmm.
just talking about kind of the process for going through the many multitude of questions, some of them sometimes from out of nowhere, on how they're going to get inspiration to create sounds for these things. And when it came to the goblins in particular, it was a really fun and quick experience, apparently, because Seth went into the booth and just laid down some giggles, and they were actually ended up being some, after some production, post production, things like that. They actually ended up being the laughs that we hear now that got into the game, because it just fit perfectly. One of the things that they keyed in on was, Diablo is a very dark game,
Hmm.
or depending on who you ask, but
Rainbows.
especially after Reaper,
Yeah.
it's supposed to have that dark feel, that gritty, like goth, etc. aesthetic. But these goblins are so like on the other side of things that some of the techniques that they usually use to create sounds and the way that they produce them and doctor them, they actually didn't use many of those techniques here because they wanted the goblin to kind of be on the other end of the spectrum, like a more happier kind of
Hmm.
dissonance almost, to shake things up. And so I thought that was kind of cool. It almost reminded me of music, like how certain like minor keys make you feel a certain way versus major, and the
Hmm.
movement of the chord progressions and things can kind of evoke certain emotions. And in the same sense, that's how they're treating sound design. So it's cool.
Yeah, and I have to just go through like with this particular article. I have to say, if you ever have the chance, like with the Diablo, not the Diablo, but like the BlizzCon live streams,
Hmm.
if you miss it or like you need to go back and any time that they have a panel involving the sound team, it is worth watching and it is one of the most entertaining panels during BlizzCon, bar none. Whether they're talking about Diablo or World of Warcraft or StarCraft, it's a lot of the same guys that work on this for all of the games. Um, but it's worth listening to. You learn so much, and they have so much fun. Like going and doing it. That I want to say that that is like those are always great talks, and the sound team are like they're just like seem to be like really fun individuals. I think it was the behind the scenes DVD for the original Diablo where they're talking about like they're out in the desert just like lighting fire to different things to like record the noises. You
Hmm.
know, it's just it's funny.
Yeah, I would love to just like, fly on the wall, spend a day, like bring your kid to work, bring your Leviathan to work, just check out how they do what they do. Because you remember the one of the lightning talks was some sound stuff. And unfortunately that was one of the ones where like it didn't get re-recorded because I don't know how you would do that again, right? Like they're
Yeah.
breaking spaghetti and cracking cymbals and things like that. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just that, but yeah, like the different things that they had going on, like putting like the dry ice on the cymbal, you know, and like they have the
Yes.
crab leg inside the spaghetti that you're going and cracking, and it makes like the perfect like bone snapping noise. And then one of the other talks that they had was about like the little bamboo mats they use for rolling sushi, like cracking those was another one that they used.
For bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff.
Mm. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up for our topics, unless you have any other things that you wanted to add in real quick. Like, I guess there was, well, there is like Quinn's video. I mentioned like a couple things from it earlier, but I don't know if you wanted to go through like his full thoughts on it before we
Uh,
hop into the community feedback section.
I did watch it. I don't have it committed to memory, so I can't remember exactly everything that he talked about, but there were a lot of strong points made just in terms of like the addition of the torment levels, which we kind of covered a little bit. Um, he seemed to be kind of happy with the lashing tail kick, but then that Scarbringer, which is the fist weapon that the lashing tail kick property got added
Mm-hmm.
onto, got nerfed. Sorry, we don't say nerfs in PTR. They got adjusted
Yep.
down from 1,000 to 300%. And I saw he like posted some image earlier today that was like, please don't nerf monks anymore. So it was kind of funny that was one of the things he was like highlighting, and then it got changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall he seemed decently happy with it. One of the things that he was saying was, and this kind of struck me interestingly, was that if if the Twitter meta comes back, he's out. He
Yeah.
doesn't want any Twitter in his Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
The Twister meta, and that was kind of my tongue in cheek point from earlier. Was like I really don't think anyone, whether you're on the support side, whether you're on the wizard side of this
Mm-hmm.
meta of just twisters everywhere, fight and punch a wall
Mm-hmm.
basically. No one wants to do that anymore. So I think they are hopefully going to take the measures towards either just breaking it completely or totally depowering it. And I kind of had a tweet where I was like, I wonder when that's gone, what's the next DPS? Like, will we ever get back to a 2 DPS meta, 2 support meta? Probably still will be 3 supports coming up, but I wonder what it would look like.
Yeah, that's one of the. I guess it's like just without some like really heavy nerfs to those supports, it's just the way that you stack on the damage buffs that you'll get more out of the three supports because the damage scales like exponentially than you will having the two supports and then two DPS.
Hmm.
You know, having
And
that
also,
third support just makes the one DPS do more than two combined.
right. And then there's still that idea of when you have one damage source, the potential for lag with the calculations and things is a
Oh
little
yeah,
less.
yeah,
So there's always that in the background.
yeah. That's one of those ones kind of showing some of the limitations of the game engine
Hmm.
with just how much is going on. Which I wonder, is that going to be a design pillar in Diablo 4? They want everything to be big, massive explosions with tons of graphic effects going off across the screen the entire time. Well, will they rein that one in down a little bit?
There's just a note on the whiteboard, less Michael Bay.
Yeah, I like it. I
Right.
like it.
Um, on Quinn's video, was there anything in particular that you wanted to pull out? It might be
I
something that maybe we can
I
touch on
mean,
again.
it's like we touched on a lot of the stuff. Like you mentioned the thing about like he also liked the pylon having a unique change, like the mini map. Um, I get there's a lot of people I see was like incorrectly like quoting or taking from the video that they were saying that if they don't nerf like the one DPS 3 supports, he's gonna quit the game. But it was what Leviathan said is specifically. It's like if Twister, it's a third season of the Twister build, he's out, and that's more or less. It's not just because of the way that, or not because of the build, but it's like as the wizard, you sit there and you click Energy Twister and nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
It's a
Oh, I
wall
found a great
facing.
wall.
Yeah, it's a wall facing build. So let me just put all these out so that they stack on top of one another against the wall, and then we're done.
Resident sleeper.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. I I wonder for people like him and others who play the game extensively. I wonder how much more of patches like this that they'll take before something else grabs their interest. Because I feel like when you build a base of viewers and like followers and things like that based on playing a game at a high level, when that like I guess what I'm trying to say is like when you're ruling the top because you are like highly into the meta and discovering some of the changes to the meta and stuff, like if you think about it, if the meta doesn't change or if it doesn't change drastically, there's not as much for you to kind of like figure out, and then therefore there's not as much for you to like grab unique content and things like that. So you have to wonder, like, for people that are really concerned about growth and like continuing their presence and gaining more, I don't know, challenges to conquer. If those run out, where do they stay? Do they go?
you mean someone that is like a creative type looking to create new content, moving on to something different and doing the same thing all the time?
Did it feels like we just had this conversation?
Oh,
Hmm.
wow. Well then,
Interesting.
yeah, there's that. That's the thing.
I think
Oh,
that about says it.
yeah. I guess with that, we can move on to the community section then.
Let's do it. I think there's something people are waiting for,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
we're gonna make them wait a little longer.
Just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little tiny bit. But yeah, we're gonna be going through into the community feedback section here. Would you like to take the first email?
I would love to take the first email, as I realized that I didn't have the emails up, but now I do. So here's the first one. It's coming in
Now
from.
he do.
I did it. It's coming in from Korova, one of our longtime listeners here. Really awesome guy. He says, "Hey guys, just listening to your latest episode, and let me quickly tell you how I fared in the season. As you might remember, I decided to play hardcore GH. I lost my first character leveling up at level 68, and that was pure overconfidence. Mind you, for me playing solo only about 1 hour a day, this is more than a week into the season. I decided to level a second one. I kind of feel like we read this. Am I losing my mind? Maybe I'm losing my mind. Got to Paragon 100 and lost this one of all places in the vault fighting against greed. I still don't really know how or why. Well, this happened a day before I could play the Overwatch early release beta, and I really didn't have it in me to start from scratch. And Overwatch was teasing me, so basically the season ended for me with a kind of sad undertone. But fear not, I will be back in season 7. By the way, your thoughts on Jay Wilson leaving? Too much vitriol from the player base? Regards and keep up the good work."
As far as like the Jay Wilson thing, I have to say no, because he had been out of the spotlight for a couple of years now. He didn't really. I'm sure he probably wasn't receiving like anything from the community. They kind of I think a lot of people probably forgot that he was even still at Blizzard because it had been so long since his name had been mentioned.
Yeah, I mean the PR move worked, right? Like they
Yeah.
took his name out of the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know that that was the impetus behind it. I mean, I think maybe there's
It did.
it's
It obviously couldn't have hurt.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure he's potentially motivated by some of that history, but also like whenever you look forward to doing something else and it really starts to grab your attention, it's hard not to like fly towards that flame, you know? If he really missed writing and he wasn't getting an outlet for it,
Mm-hmm.
you might as well fly.
Yeah. Why not?
You only got one life. Live it well.
Yeah. What's the term? YOLO?
YOLO?
God, I hate myself a little bit right now because I said that. Uh, moving on to our next email. This one comes in from Aggro Craig. Hardcore story time. Hey guys, I just started listening to your show last month as I recently got back into Diablo with some friends. I played religiously in vanilla, but eventually the unrewarding grind got to me and I fell off. I came back briefly when Reaper's Souls dropped, but it didn't stick. Recently, some friends I've met from around the country started to play the newest season, and I hopped in as a way of keeping in touch with them. I started playing hardcore with them for the first time ever, and it was a blast. When leveling, we always set the difficulty a level higher than we were comfortable with. This helped me quickly learn to play carefully, as leveling on expert will quickly punish you for any mistakes. Eventually, my witch doctor reached level 70 and I was hooked. I started the gear grind immediately, transitioning out of my Zuni set into Helltooth. I was pushing greater of 65 for a spot on the leaderboard, which was my goal for the season. I got a particularly brutal rift. All the mobs were large, beefy enemies, and I was pretty slow on time. Eventually, I spawned the Rift Guardian with 15 seconds to go, and it was perdition. I was instantly procced and was able to run back a level and wait out the cooldown. Being the stubborn fool that I am, I wanted to show Perdition who was boss. Turns out that he is. After 78 hours played, I lost my first character, rest in peace, Carl, but I was determined I would eventually clear a 65 on the Witch Doctor. Unfortunately, the leaderboard has moved up to 66 by this point, before my group decided I should play Wizard. Several hours of grinding later, and I can say that I have completed my goal of being on the leaderboard as a Wizard, having cleared up to greater of 71. I'm still loving pushing higher and higher with my friends. Glad this game and community are as vibrant as ever, and I can't wait to partake in my first opening night rush when Season 7 begins. Thanks for the awesome podcast so I can live other players' stories with them while I slave away at work. Keep up with the awesome discussion.
Nice. I'm glad that the death didn't push him away, because there's always that, like, I'm trying hardcore, I
Yeah.
died. I'm trying softcore again.
Yeah, that's the make or break point. That's really it is, because it's something that we've talked about a lot on the show. Not as much, I want to say, in the last couple months, but something that we talked about a lot in the earlier episodes. Hardcore, yeah, it's a give and a take. When you're playing the game on hardcore, like the adrenaline rush that you get when you actually get into a difficult situation is unlike anything that you've ever felt like in a game before. Um, but then of course the down of actually when you make bad mistakes or you die to lag or something like that, the lows are really low because you just lost
Mm,
that character. And is the highs more than compensating the lows? Is the adrenaline rush worth the disappointment of losing the character?
exactly.
Some people it is, some people it isn't, and both are fine.
Indeed. Both certainly valid.
Hmm.
Um, One thing I wanted to key on from his also was the excitement for the season 7 opening night rush, and every time PTR comes back up, I get reminded of that feeling, because pretty soon we'll be able to see what the conquests and things are when the season 7 goes live on PTR for testing. So I'm looking forward to, like, every time there's a little update, I'm like, oh, is the season live yet on it? Like, it's almost a second season
Hmm.
within the season. I'm like, oh, I want to get in there, and, like, even though it's so, like, pointless to do it in the PTR, I just love it anyways.
But you can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I will. I just love leveling. I don't know why. I think it's really that idea of using the skills that you will probably never use. Like, I am Johnny Appleseed. Okay, I admit it. I like Smite. So I just love, like, the
That
ability.
that Johnny Appleseed guy is kind of a dick now at this point.
Oh my god, he keeps butting in and talking about his stupid build that no one
uh,
cares about. What a dick. It's just like Smite is awesome, and it's just a generator and no one cares, but when it's the, like, one of the few AoE skills that you have as a Crusader when you're leveling up, it's like a godsend. So I think I just love leveling up for that purpose alone,
hmm.
and that you get to use some of those skills that you'll probably never put on your bar again.
Yeah, you get to go through and change it up a little bit and like have fun with something.
Hmm.
Even though like the Seeker of the Light set like for a Crusader, isn't all that great, but if you find the shield for it, ah, that's
Going to
it.
town.
Yeah, all of a sudden, as you're leveling, that couple of, like, what is it? It starts dropping at 36, 40 something.
Sounds about right. Yeah, 30
Yeah,
something.
yeah. If you get that, at a decently low level, you'll have that all the way to 70, and all of a sudden, Blessed Hammer is like the greatest skill in the game. For those like 30 levels or so, and then probably up until you finish your Hadrig's gifts. So it's a different way of looking at and playing the game.
Yeah. And you mentioned Hadrig's Gift too, and it's weird because as a power gamer, like I really want to base my class and thing that I pick on the Hadrig's Gift so that I'm using it to the like most of my advantage. But at the same time, I kind of miss like, there was that instance in season one where you and I were playing extensively together
Hmm.
and I got a Roland set. Like I was looking forward to getting a cons and trying to see what I could do with that, but Roland kept dropping, or maybe it was season two. I can't remember. Um, but we rolled with it, right? Like that was the drop. Those were the drops I had. You had crazy DPS. I was just like locking stuff down with all the
Hmm.
spammed out sweep attacks and stunning stuff, and it was just cool to do something different because that was what we had available on hand. But
Hmm.
now, like you kind of craft your seasonal progression even before it starts because you're like, I know I'm picking TH because it's Marauders and Marauders is going to be really good. So it kind of takes away some of that discovery moment.
Yeah. What would happen if, like, for a season, the Hadrig's gift is like Legacy of Nightmares and then like four ancient pieces?
Huh.
I don't know. That's just like a thought that just randomly occurred to me just now.
I think that would be cool because it would just make every drop like that much more exciting. She's like, oh, is it going to be ancient? Because you're gaining a huge amount. Like, doesn't matter what. Could be the Trang Ul's bracers or whatever before they got changed. You're
Yeah.
like, I never wear these bracers, but they're ancient. I'm wearing them right now.
Hmm.
It would. The only thing I could see against that would be that it would completely invalidate any set pieces that you find. So that season would not be the
True.
set season. But I mean, if you do it like, you know, how many? We're going to be on like our 10th season soon.
That
After a
that would
while.
that would be a great point for them to go through, like one of the ideas that we had, where it's you have a season where set items can't drop, and
Mm.
so you get the Legacy of Nightmares in Hadrig's Gift. Obviously, that would have to still be able to continue to drop, but then like none of the other class sets would drop, and you get Legacy of Nightmares from Hadrig, and then it's like there, go at it, have fun.
And actually, that would be a cool season because the pool of items would actually be smaller, so you would have better shots at actually completing a really, really good looking Legacy of Nightmares set.
Hmm.
Just because the odds are in your favor to find good ancient pieces when half of those aren't being spent on really well rolled Akon's pieces or Roland's pieces or things like that.
Hmm.
I wonder. It kind of brings to mind a second question of the idea of development. So we're noticing the patches are getting slim, or kind of winding down, perhaps. So when we get to the point where seasons are being rolled over with these patches, but the changes are really minuscule, I wonder if they've implemented anything to kind of manipulate stuff like this, where they can say we'll have a season that's a little different than what you've had previously. There aren't a ton of changes in this patch, but the season itself has, a wacky thing going on, so that might give you reason to play.
Hmm. And that would be something, once we start pushing, past into like season 10, season 11, because for those that have gone into it, they'll have their full stash space, so you don't feel compelled to have to like complete the journey. It would
Exactly.
suck for those that don't have it at that point, would have to try and complete the seasonal journey with some sort of wacky thing, but they could always nerf the seasonal journey to compensate for it.
That's true too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm,
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, I think we've got the one last email from you.
Yes, sir. So I've got one here from Putin Dogs. I bet he plays a witch doctor. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm interested in rejoining the Blizz Pro clan. I joined in season 4, but then because of real life obligations, I had to step away. I've been playing all of season 6, and this will be the first complete season that I've played, and I really enjoy the game. I'm now thinking of next season, and I would like to start Season 7 in a clan, so please consider my request for membership. And P.S. I am a shy person by nature and extremely competitive. I leveled my first hardcore character to 70 this season. I'm thinking of maining hardcore next season. It does scare me a bit. Come on in, friend. The water is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually was able to get into the clan. And I guess this is a good moment to note that we are definitely in that lull. Spots are freeing up across the board,
Mm-hmm.
and even requests for invites like on the actual in-game clan uh, interface are pretty low as well too. So if you have wanted to join, if you've been contemplating it, you're like, yeah, I don't know, throw your name into the hat right now because it's a really good shot to get in. But let me be clear that you need to be out of a clan to be accepted into the clan. So I know it's this weird, like it puts you in a chasm of, oh, I left my clan and I'm hoping to join this one. I don't know if I'll get in. I'm trying to be really good. I mean, I log in every day. Like I play the game every
Mm-hmm.
day. So I will see a request in at least 24 hours, sometimes shorter than that. And like I said, there's space. So don't be afraid. Well, I've had to like it's really weird to manage it because some of them I wanted to accept, but then it's like they're in a clan, but then they're offline, so then I can't even message them to be like, "Hey, you're in a clan, I can't accept you." So then it just sits there
And sits there. It
and
sits there.
sits there. It sits there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that brings us to the end of the community section, and we next have our item of the week.
Item of
Of the week!
the week. Week.
Yep. So this week we only had one item sent in. This was sent in from Replay, which, oddly enough, this was one that we didn't include last week because it was sent in like shortly before the show. Um,
This is all
but
planned.
yeah, totally planned. Um, yeah, Replay went and sent in this Ancient Ina's Reach, which clocks in at 4,089 DPS. It rolled with 10% bonus damage, 1,450 dexterity, 1,378 vitality, increases mystic ally damage by 115%, and has a secondary bonus of plus 27 maximum spirit. Nothing's been rerolled on it, and no Happy Meals in there for a socket. Well, that just was a nice item that he wanted to go through and show off.
I'm digging it.
Yeah, so that's if you have any comments or feedback, or you want to submit any items of the week, you can always drop us a line at westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. Again, feel free to email us, your thoughts or feelings or your epic loot, and that is again westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. And now, of course, the moment that you're all waiting for, I'm sure it was something that I was looking forward to throughout the entire week, is last week, or not last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, I still have to get used to this. Um, we started a little contest to give away all of the Overwatch cosmetic items. We're giving away the free code for all the Overwatch cosmetic items to a listener. All they had to do was email in their thoughts on adding a Diablo 3 character, or not a Diablo 3, but a Diablo character into Overwatch. And through the entries that we got, I have to go through and say that my favorite one actually came in from Riss, not Rise, but Riss, Slacker Riss. You are the winner. Congratulations! I'll be going through and emailing you the Overwatch code here later tonight. If you're not here in chat or listening live, you'll all of a sudden find yourself with an email before you get to hear that you're a winner. But yeah, congratulations.
Woo.
Um, but I want to go through and also, read his entry because he did like go through and put a lot of thought and effort into this. Not to say, we did get a couple other entries that had a lot of thought that was put into them. This one was my favorite, and maybe I'm just biased, because spoilers, it's a necromancer. But yeah, this one was definitely my favorite. Sup, fellas. This is my second time writing in, and I still love the show as always. I'm always amazed at how you guys have so much to talk about with our amazing game of Diablo 3, even with the slow to no news from the devs. I look forward to every episode on YouTube as to keep up with the good work, because you guys are awesome. Personally, my season 6 is not going so well. No awesome loot to show off, and struggling to get the ancient Demon Hunter gear for my Unhallowed Essence build, which will eventually lead me to my extra stash tab. Seriously hope I can finish it before the season ends because real life has happened. But I heard on the previous show that you might be giving away an Overwatch Origins Editions code for the cool Mercy Wings, which I really want to get. My laptop is 6 years old and just too old to play Overwatch, so I just don't see the point in getting it just yet until I can upgrade. But heck, those wings look awesome, and I hope to get it if my idea is good enough. I knew a Necromancer would be a popular choice, but somehow having a Cyberwolf druid is not as cool as a Cybermancer. No, seriously, how can you not have a Master Necromancer to represent a Diablo character in Overwatch? So here is my contribution. If they brought Zul to Heroes of the Storm, how about bringing Mindolin in his appearance of Trangol as one of the Guardians of the Balance? Story. Ah, the familiar scent of death. Cybermancer. Born in Greece, Mindolin grew up as a genius scientist who was raised by a shamanistic family. Having nearly lost his life and losing his family, his wife and child, to terrorist organizations hired by the Shemitah ninja clan years ago, he vowed to seek revenge and use his scientific brilliance to bring justice to those who had murdered his family, with the hope that one day he would raise his wife and child from the dead. In his journey of revenge, he meets one of the dragon Shemitah brothers, Genji, and during his years of wandering, and learns more about the cybernetics technology that created him. Firmly believing in life after death, he used his newfound knowledge of nanomachines and AI programming to create a cybernetic body for himself to transfer his consciousness from his ailing body into that so that way he could carry on his work even in death. Resembling the Terminator from Terminator 3, the Cybermancer uses liquid metal from himself and the surroundings to accomplish these tasks. Mindolin travels the world supporting his benefactor, Genji. The role. Rather than using skeleton bones, this version of the Necromancer uses liquid metal. My vision of Mindolin is a defense support character with a high defensive self regenerative ability, as well as his four skills that would include a Bone Spear, fires a sharp metallic spines made from the liquid metal, which pierces through multiple enemies in a single row. Bone Wall summons a horizontal metallic-like bone wall which obstructs movement from a fixed set with hit points, but also regenerates his hit points. Summon Metal Golem, using on the corpses of your enemies to summon a Metal Golem that takes on the dead enemy's attacks, power, hit points, and the enemies who hit him that hit the Golem receive thorns damage. And finally, Corpse Explosion, using the corpses of your enemy, charging up 3 seconds, detonates an ultimate corpse explosion to release thousands of metal-like shards to slay all remaining enemies in a given area of effect. The damage and area of effect increases with additional corpses in the area. Well, I hope my idea is a good enough chance at winning those Mercy Wings, but thank you for taking the time to read my email. Yours sincerely, Slacker Riss.
It's pretty cool.
Yep.
I like that ultimate too because it kind of like relies on your teammates also being good at killing stuff. Because it sounds like his damage output would be decent, but like you would, as a support, be mostly relying on your other teammates killing things, and then boom, this huge, massive corpse explosion to take out everyone else. Could be pretty sick. I also would love it. I know there's like no friendly fire in Overwatch, but it would also be hilarious if you could troll your team and just blow everyone else up too.
Yeah, that would be. That would be. I guess it's just like one of those things. It's like the concept of it is like cool, but it's like one of those from like a development standpoint, just like going and thinking about it. That ultimate sounds like it'd be awesome, but like if your team is having issues, it'd be difficult to pull off because you have to kill somebody in order to use it.
That's true.
And then if your team is already good enough to go through and start killing people, is it like a bloodlust and Hearthstone? Is it just a win more?
Snowball.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I'm already winning. This just allows me to win more.
But imagine it's like that, you're down to overtime. They're on the point. Your Widowmaker snipes one person that's like, their weak tracer or something, and then that
And
corpse explosion just
boom.
takes, oh, like you
Yeah.
capture that point. That could be a sick moment.
Yeah, and also the other cool thing about that is, like you were mentioning, it's cooperative. It requires like, contributions from your team in order to go through and, put into it.
Which is like the whole idea behind Overwatch.
I know, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty cool, well
Yeah.
developed story there.
Yeah, so definitely, thank you for that. And I also like how he ties it in. It's like it's a Diablo character, like a necromancer, and he finds a way of making it work within the Overwatch world. So he ties like, the best of both worlds together. Thought that was also like a really nice touch to it.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, but he's the winner. But also thank you everyone else that went through and submitted in, your thoughts and ideas to the contest. It's like, we did also have some really cool ideas that went and came through from some other people. Maybe we'll read them again at one point. But we're starting to get into the 2 hour mark here, so I think we're probably going to be wrapping it up here. Before we get into the outro, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I would just say that for anyone who enjoyed this competition, participant or not, get those creative juices flowing because Nine Ball's generosity is making me feel generous as well. And I think we have some kind of anniversary or momentous occasion coming up where maybe we can give some things away.
All right. All right.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more. Yeah. And with that, just wanted to go through and, as we say every week, thank you for going and tuning into the show. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any thoughts, ideas, items, that you want to show off, you can email us here at the show. Our email address is westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter. The official account is at the WM Workshop. And then we're here every other Wednesday, live streaming at twitch.tv/BlizzPro at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And while you're here, we'd go through, click the follow button. If you're feeling generous, you can subscribe to the channel as well. And check out all the other wonderful shows that we have to offer. Sunday nights is Well Met, our Hearthstone podcast. Tuesday night is the Heroes Power Hour. Then Thursdays we have the Payload, which is the Overwatch podcast. You can also check out a lot of the things that we have to discuss, as well as finding the show itself at diablo.blizzpro.com. We're even in game. We're the BlizzPro clan that you can go through. As Steven mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of open spots. Now would be a good time to get in, as long as you can maintain the activity requirements, because it's much easier to get in now in the middle of the season than it will be the weeks-long waiting list that we have at the beginning of next season.
Hmm.
If you don't feel like leaving your current clan, you can always join our in-game community. Just do a search for Westmarch Workshop. We're also in our voice chat, discord.blizzpro.com from time to time. And you can even follow us individually. I'm at 9ballgamer. If you're watching the live stream or listening to the YouTube channel, you don't pay attention to what it says under Leviathan's name. His actual Twitter account is now at Leviathan D3. I just haven't updated the overlay because I am a noob.
So bad.
Yeah, nine
Nine
balls
Ball is
bad.
bad.
It's like that's a thing. Oh
Huh.
no. Wow. Yeah. And with that, closing out to the outro. So if you have any last minute comments, now would be the time to make it.
You might see my name in the game soon, maybe. Please, Blizzard.
We, yeah, oh, shit, we didn't even mention that, did we?
I forgot. Next
Oh
time.
God, yeah, next. No, no, this man right here, Leviathan, is having his name potentially added in as one of the elite, one of the yellows, one of the elite mob, and Leviathan's being added into the name pool for elite mobs. There we go. That was apparently extremely difficult for me to say. But yes, he is getting added in, to the game alongside a lot of other streamers and community members are going through and having their names thrown into the pool. I think it was like 7 or 8 people that are getting added in this time around.
Yeah. Like Riker's there, Quinn's
Yeah.
there, a
So
couple other
definitely
names.
big on ups to you and congratulations, good sir.
Thanks, man. Super excited.
Yep. I guess with that, well, good night, everybody.